Have you ever given a stranger something small, only to realize it would change your life forever? I didn't know it then, but the day I gave $350 to a woman sitting barefoot on a street corner was the day my entire world cracked open, not with pain, but with truth and a ghost in the past I thought I buried long ago. My name is Richard Lawson. People call me a billionaire, a mogul, a man who has everything. But if you ever sat across from me, truly looked into my eyes, you'd see the truth. I've been empty for 15 years. I built towers that touch the clouds. I closed deals worth millions while sipping scotch older than most people's dreams. And yet, there's a grave on the edge of a quiet cemetery that holds more of me than any of my mansions ever could. Her name was Emily, my first love, my only love. She was a light in a life I didn't realize was dark until she left. No, until I pushed her away. 15 years ago, I made a mistake I never forgave myself for. I chose pride, and Emily chose to walk away. They told me she died not long after. A car crash, a closed casket, no goodbye. I mourned her the only way I knew how, in silence, in business, in control. Every year, I'd go to her grave on her birthday, place the same white lilies she loved, say nothing, and leave. But this year, something changed. 2 days before her birthday, I saw a young woman outside a cafe, hair tangled, clothes torn, holding a cardboard sign with nothing written on it. She didn't ask for help. She just looked at me like she knew me. I don't know why I stopped, why I reached into my wallet and gave her exactly $350. But I did, and as she took it, she looked into my eyes and whispered, "You look just like him." I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't want to, but I should have, because 2 days later, I saw her again, at Emily's grave, kneeling, crying, holding a photograph. That's when my world, my carefully controlled, emotionally bankrupt world, shattered. Sometimes the world thinks success means wholeness, that if you wear a tailored suit, sign $1 million contracts, and drive home in a car that hums like a whisper, you must be happy. But let me tell you something. You can live in a penthouse and still feel like you're 6 feet under. That's where I lived, in the echo of glass and steel, in the absence of a voice that once made silence feel warm, in the shape of a memory named Emily. Every morning felt the same. I'd wake before the city stirred, before even the birds dared speak, not because I wanted to, but because sleep was the only place she still existed. My condo sat 32 floors above the chaos. But even from that height, I could still hear the one thing that never stopped whispering. Emily and I met in a life that doesn't exist anymore. Back when I was still human, before the Forbes list, before I buried myself in numbers and negotiations. She saw me then, not the brand, not the ambition, just me, and I ruined it. Not all at once, but little by little. One missed dinner, one selfish demand, one moment of pride too loud for love to survive. We fought the last time we spoke. She left crying, and the next time I heard her name was when they called me, told me she died in a car crash. A piece of me never left that moment. It's funny how the world keeps spinning when your soul stops moving. I made more money that year than ever before, opened new branches, bought another company. But when the cameras turned off, when the champagne stopped bubbling, I'd sit in my room, look at her old scarf I never returned, and wonder how love could be so permanent in memory and so fragile in reality. That morning, the one where this all began, was just like any other, cloudy, quiet, pointless. I stepped out of my office after a lunch meeting with board members who nodded more than they spoke. A new merger was happening, some tech thing. I didn't even care. Numbers came easy. Feelings? That's where I'd gone bankrupt. Then I saw her, a girl, maybe mid-20s, torn jeans, face smudged, sitting on the sidewalk near Fifth and Hanover. No sign, no words, just presence. She looked up at me, and her eyes, God, they reminded me of someone I couldn't place yet. I don't know why I stopped. I hadn't stopped for anyone in years. I hadn't felt anything in years. But something about her felt like an unfinished sentence. I reached into my wallet and gave her $350. Not $300. Not $400. Just that number. Maybe it meant something. Maybe it didn't. But she didn't look surprised. She didn't even say thank you. She just stared at me and said softly, "You look just like him." "What?" I asked, confused, but she just smiled sad and crooked, stood up, and walked away before I could say another word. Her voice stayed with me long after her footsteps vanished into the noise. I sat in my car that night, keys in the ignition, headlights painting the street in pale yellow, wondering what she meant. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened an old box I kept in my closet. Inside, a photograph of Emily and me in Central Park. A ticket stub from a concert she made me go to even though I hated the band. And a letter, the one she wrote me the day she left. I'd never opened it. 15 years, and I'd never found the courage. But that night, her voice, "You look just like him," kept spinning in my head like a storm. So I opened it, and inside was a sentence that broke me all over again. "If I ever disappear, just know I never stopped loving you. I just couldn't wait for you to love me back." I held the letter to my chest, closed my eyes, and felt something warm run down my cheek. Tears. Not because I missed her, but because somehow it felt like she was trying to reach me again. I told myself it was nothing, that the girl was just a stranger, a face I'd forget by morning. But I was wrong. 2 days later, on Emily's birthday, I went to the cemetery like I always did, with white lilies, her favorite. I expected silence. I expected wind. What I didn't expect was her, the same girl, the one I gave $350 to, kneeling at Emily's grave, crying, holding a photograph in shaking hands. I stood frozen, white lilies clutched in my hand, like a forgotten gesture. The wind seemed to stop. Even the birds, the only companions I usually had on this lonely ritual, were silent. There she was, the girl from the street. Only this time, she wasn't invisible to the world. She wasn't a stranger sitting in the shadows. She was something else now, part of my story, part of my pain. She knelt at Emily's grave like she belonged there, crying like someone who lost more than just a person, like someone who lost a part of themselves. She held a photograph in trembling fingers. Her shoulders were shaking, and for a second, I thought I was hallucinating. My throat tightened as I stepped forward, unable to stop myself. My voice came out rough, unfamiliar. "Why are you here?" She turned slowly. Her eyes were red, and when she looked at me, she didn't flinch. She didn't pretend. She just said, "You brought me here." I blinked. "What?" "That day, on the sidewalk, you gave me money. But what you really gave me was the strength to come." She looked down at the grave again, ran her fingers over the engraved name. Emily Harper, 1983 to 2010. She was my mother. The words hit me like ice water. No, this wasn't possible. I shook my head, my heart pounding against my ribs. That's not. Emily didn't have a daughter. Her lips twitched, not in amusement, but in pain. That's what you think. I took a step back. "Who are you?" She reached into her worn bag and pulled out the photo, handed it to me. It was old, faded. Emily, smiling in a park, sunlight in her hair, holding a baby, wrapped in a pink blanket. Her eyes were full of love. Beside her stood a man. His face was scratched out. But Emily's posture, her hand gently resting on his arm, told me it was someone she trusted. I stared at the photo, my fingers trembling. "That's me," she said, in her arms. "Sophie." I couldn't breathe. The world was spinning. None of this made sense. I looked at the grave like it might give me an answer, but the stone just sat there, cold, silent. Why didn't she tell me? I whispered. Sophie wiped her cheeks. "You had a fight, didn't you?" Before she left, I nodded slowly. She was already pregnant. Sophie said, but you never gave it a chance. I felt like I was collapsing from the inside, like someone had just cracked open my chest and poured fire into it. She could have told me. I muttered, I would have, but Sophie cut me off. Would you? Or would you have told her to get rid of it? To protect your career? Your image? I recoiled. You don't know me. I know enough, she said softly. I wanted to scream, to tell her she had no right. But the truth is, deep down, I was asking myself the same question. Would I have been ready? Back then, I was all ambition, all ego. Love was second. Everything else came first. I lowered myself onto the cold grass beside the grave. The photo trembled in my hand. How did she die? I asked. Sophie swallowed hard. Childbirth. Complications. She was alone. It happened too fast. I closed my eyes. Pain like I'd never felt before coursed through me. Worse than the grief I'd carried for 15 years. Because this time, I wasn't just mourning her. I was mourning everything I never knew. I looked at Sophie again. Really looked at her. She had Emily's chin, her quiet strength, and her eyes. They weren't just familiar. They were mine. Who raised you? She laughed bitterly. The system. Foster homes. Some better than others. Most just wanted the checks. No one really wanted me. I gritted my teeth. Why now? Why come here now? She looked down. Because I want to see if you were real. What do you mean? She told me about you. Richard Lawson. The man who broke her heart. And the man she never stopped loving. I had your name. I had questions. But when I found you that day and you gave me that money, you didn't recognize me. But you looked like the picture she painted. She paused. Kind, but lonely. Tears welled in my eyes. I looked back at the grave. She should have told me. She tried. The wind picked up again. The world moved around us, like it hadn't paused for this grief. But inside, I felt shattered. 15 years. A daughter I never knew. A love I buried too soon. A child who grew up without her mother and without me. I stood up, brushing the grass from my pants. Come with me, I said. Sophie frowned. Where? Anywhere. I don't know. Just, I need to talk. I need to know everything. She hesitated, then nodded once. Okay. We walked away from the grave together. Not quite family. Not yet forgiven. But something had shifted. Something irreversible. We didn't talk much on the way back. The silence between us wasn't cold. It was heavy, like grief taking the front seat. I took her to a quiet diner. One of those old places with scratch booths and coffee that tastes like memory. We sat in the corner. I ordered tea for her, coffee for myself. Neither of us touched it. Sophie stared at the chip table. I watched her, every feature. I kept trying to convince myself that this couldn't be real, that it was just a strange coincidence, a cruel joke played by fate. But every time she blinked, every time she looked away, I saw Emily. So I finally said, tell me everything. She didn't look up. Her fingers traced circles on the rim of the mug. She used to hum when she cooked, she whispered. Not a song, just hum, like the sound kept her from feeling alone. I felt my chest tighten. She always told me, Sophie continued, that love was her greatest risk, that she fell in love with a man who made her feel alive, even if he didn't know how to hold her heart. I closed my eyes. She said that. Yeah, she said softly. She never blamed you, not out loud. But I think she waited, hoped you'd come looking. My voice cracked. I didn't even know she was gone until it was too late. She didn't want a funeral, Sophie said. No guests, no drama, just her ashes in this grave. I looked away. Guilt sat in my throat like gravel. She died thinking I didn't care, I whispered. She died thinking you were gone, Sophie replied. Not heartless, just unreachable. I wanted to explain. Tell her how I buried myself in work. How I drank too much, smiled too little. How I stared at her picture every damn night wondering what I did wrong. But none of that would fix it. You said she died in childbirth. I asked. What happened? Sophie finally looked up. She went into labor at night, alone. No one knew until the next morning. By the time help arrived, it was too late. I clenched my jaw. She died, bringing you into the world. And I spent the rest of my life trying to understand why no one came for me, she said. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was broken. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to fix anything. I just wanted to feel. I should have found you, I said. All these years. I could have. You didn't know, she interrupted gently. And maybe if you had, maybe I wouldn't be sitting here today. Do you hate me? I asked, unable to stop myself. She paused. Then she shook her head. No, I don't think I ever did. I just needed answers. And when I saw you on that street, something in me said, that's him. I ran a hand over my face. Why didn't you say anything then? She shrugged. Because part of me didn't want to be disappointed. Silence again. This time, not painful. Just real. Where did you live? I asked. After everything? Foster homes. Lots of them. Some okay, some not. I aged out at 18. Took odd jobs. Couch surfed. Slept on benches. Got used to being invisible. My fists clenched. She smiled weakly. It's not your fault. Isn't it? I asked. No, it's the world's. It's the system's. And maybe it's just fate. She leaned back in the booth, looked out the window. But I kept her photo. Always. Carried it in my pocket. Every night. Every storm. I nodded slowly, my heart aching. She loved you, I said. So much. You were her world. I know, she whispered. But I wanted to know why I never got to meet the man she talked about. The one with the fire in his eyes and walls around his heart. Because I was a coward, I admitted. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and there wasn't judgment in her eyes. There was something else. Sadness. You weren't ready, she said. No, I replied, but I am now. We sat in silence again. Only this time, there was something between us. Something new, not just grief. Possibility. Sophie, I said, voice trembling, do you have anyone now? Anyone who cares. She hesitated. I have someone, she said. Someone small. I frowned. Small. She smiled just barely. My son. The word hit me like lightning. Your son? His name's Daniel. He's 6. I froze. The child, my grandson? He doesn't know much about any of this, she said. About you? About her? I swallowed. Can I meet him? Sophie studied me for a long time. Then, slowly, she nodded. Maybe, if he wants to. A fragile pause. And if I want to. I nodded, accepting the weight of that condition. Whatever it takes. I want to try. Trying, she whispered, is a good place to start. The photo in her hand, it stopped my heart. Not because it was old. Not because it was wrinkled or torn. But because I had taken that photo myself. Years ago, on a rainy afternoon when Emily and I danced barefoot in my parents' garden. Her hair was wet, wild, and she had kissed me right after I clicked the picture. And now it was in this young woman's hands. Where did you get that? My voice was quieter than I intended. She looked up slowly, her eyes red, her body trembling. And then she said something that made the blood drain from my face. She was my mother. My knees nearly gave out. Emily had a daughter? No, that's not possible, I whispered, stepping back, shaking my head. Emily, she died. She was alone. That's what they told me. The girl looked at me, her voice cracking. They lied to you. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fall to my knees and beg for it to be a dream. But her eyes, they were Emily's. The same deep hazel. The same quiet fire. I don't understand. I choked. Who are you? She stood up slowly and whispered, my name is Grace. Grace. A name Emily once told me she loved. I'm sorry, Grace said, her voice tight with something between rage and heartbreak. I didn't mean for you to find out like this. But when I saw you, I had to know. I had to be sure. I stared at her, the world spinning. How long have you known about me? I asked. Only a few weeks, she said. After my mom passed away, I found letters, dozens of them, all written to you, but none of them were sent. My chest ached. Letters. She nodded, pulling a crumpled envelope from her coat. She handed it to me. My name was on it, in Emily's handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. Richard, if you're reading this, I couldn't send it. I was scared. Scared of reopening wounds. Scared you reject her. But you deserve to know Grace is yours. She looks like you. She's smart like you. And I hope one day fate will bring her to you. I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred. All these years, I thought I lost Emily. But I lost so much more. A daughter. A life that could have been. Tears streamed down my face. I never knew. I whispered. Grace looked down. I figured, but it didn't make it hurt less. I want to make it right, I said without thinking. I don't know how, but I want to try. She looked up sharply. You can't erase years of absence with good intentions. Her words stung, but I didn't back away. I know, but I can start by not walking away again. She hesitated. Then quietly she asked, Why did you and Mom break up? I laughed bitterly through my tears. Because I was a fool. I let money and ego decide my life. She wanted something simple. I thought I needed to be more. Grace sat beside the grave again. She talked about you, even when she was sick. She said she never stopped loving you. My heart broke all over again, and I never stopped loving her. I said, kneeling beside her. We sat there in silence for a long time, two strangers, bound by grief, regret, and blood. And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel alone. I never imagined the first time I'd meet my daughter would be like this, at a grave, under gray skies, with years of pain between us. But that's how life works sometimes. It doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you need. And I needed Grace, not just to feel close to Emily again, but to remember who I was before I lost myself in the race for wealth, power, and prestige. We walked back to the car in silence that day. I didn't ask her to come with me. I didn't want to push. But before parting ways, I gave her something. It was a photo of Emily and me laughing in that same garden. The original version of the copy she held. I think your mom would have wanted you to have this, I said. She took it with shaking hands. Then, just before turning away, she asked, if I ever wanted to talk again, would that be okay? I nodded, tears threatening again. Anytime, anywhere. The days after that felt like I was walking through memories. Every room in my mansion felt too big, too empty. Every mirror reflected a version of me I didn't want to be anymore. I pulled out the old box where I kept a few things from my youth. Among them was the watch Emily had given me when I got my first job. She engraved the back with 3 words. Time means love. I had wasted so much of it, but maybe it wasn't too late. 2 weeks passed before I heard from Grace again. She called, said she didn't want to talk about the past, but maybe the future. We met at a small coffee shop. Not my usual 5-star place, but the kind Emily would have loved. Grace looked guarded, but calmer. I've been thinking, she said, about what comes next. So have I replied. She sipped her drink and glanced up. I don't need your money. I know, I said softly, but I'm offering something more important. What? My presence, my time, my honesty. I want to know you, Grace, as a person, not because of guilt, not out of pity, but because you're my daughter, and you deserve that. She looked away. Her voice trembled. I don't know how to be someone's daughter. I reached across the table, and I don't know how to be someone's father, but maybe we can learn together. She didn't say anything, but she didn't pull her hand away either. That winter, I invited her to my home for the holidays. She walked in slowly, as if unsure whether she belonged. I know it's a lot, I said, smiling gently. Too many rooms, too little soul. She gave a small smile. It's beautiful, but kind of sad. She wasn't wrong. Until she came. We cooked together. Badly. She made fun of how I still burn toast. We laughed at old photos, told stories, watched movies late into the night. I found myself looking forward to things again. To mornings. To simple conversations. To connection. One evening, she asked to see Emily's letters again. We sat on the floor, surrounded by candlelight, reading her words. In every one, Emily had written about her dreams, about the daughter she was raising, about the man she still missed. And in that moment, I realized something. Even though Emily was gone, she was here, living in Grace's smile, her stubbornness, her kindness. And somehow, she had brought us together, even after death. One night, Grace looked at me and said, "You're not the man I expected." I braced myself. Good or bad? She smiled. Different, but maybe better. That meant more to me than any business deal, any award, any bank balance. Because for the first time, I wasn't rich in money. I was rich in something else. Redemption, love, family. And it was all because of one moment of kindness. That day I stopped on the street and gave my umbrella to a young woman in the rain. A stranger who turned out to be my daughter. A beggar who wasn't begging for money but for truth, for connection, for answers, and maybe, just maybe, for a father. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror, tying the same dull gray tie I'd worn to countless business meetings. But today it felt different. Heavier, like it no longer belonged to the man I was trying to become. Last night had changed everything. I had a daughter, and I had missed her entire childhood. The guilt sat on my chest like an anchor, but beside that weight was something else. An unfamiliar flicker of hope. A second chance. I walked to the cemetery again that morning. Grace was already there, sitting on the bench near Emily's grave, clutching a small bouquet of wildflowers. "Hi," I said softly. She didn't look at me, but she nodded. "I brought coffee," I said, holding out a cup. She hesitated, then took it. A small start. We sat in silence again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It felt necessary, like two people learning to breathe in a space where air had once been too painful to share. I read more of the letters last night. I said, "Your mom, she forgave me, even when I didn't deserve it." Grace's voice was quiet. She always saw the good in people, even when it hurt her. I nodded. I think I'm finally starting to see what she saw. Grace glanced at me. "So what now? You disappear again? Go back to your millionaire life and forget the girl you found crying at a cemetery." Her words weren't cruel, just cautious, wounded. "No," I said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere. Not this time." She stared at me, searching for cracks in my promise. "You don't owe me anything," she said. "I'm not asking for a father." "I know," I replied, "but I'm offering to be one anyway. If you'll let me." She didn't respond, but she didn't walk away either. Instead, she asked, "What do you remember most about her?" I smiled faintly, the way she used to laugh when the world was falling apart, like hope was something she carried in her pocket. Grace blinked fast, her eyes glassy. She laughed like that when I lost my first tooth, said it made me officially grown up. We both chuckled softly. It was the first time we shared something without pain. That afternoon, I took her to a quiet diner Emily used to love. The waitress still remembered her, even brought over Emily's favorite dessert without asking. "Your mom used to order this when she was sad," I said. Grace smiled. Then she must have eaten a lot. Her honesty didn't sting. It humbled me. "You don't have to forgive me," I said, my voice low, "but I'd like to earn your trust. Maybe over a few more slices of pie." Grace looked at me for a long time. Then she nodded once. One slice at a time. We talked for hours. About her life. About mine. About everything in between that we never got to share. She told me about the foster homes after Emily passed, the loneliness, the walls she built just to survive. And I told her about the empire I built with my name on every door. But no one waiting for me at home. We were both broken, but not beyond repair. That night, I sat in my penthouse, surrounded by luxury that suddenly felt meaningless. The silence echoed louder than ever. So I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. "I want to rewrite my will," I said. The next morning, I found Grace sitting by the river, sketching in a notebook. "I made you something," I said, holding out a small velvet box. She raised an eyebrow. "Is it a ring? Because I think we skipped a few steps." I laughed. "Not that kind of box." Inside was a pendant. Simple, elegant. Emily's birthstone in the center. Grace's engraved name on the back. She held it gently, tracing the edges with her finger. "It's beautiful." "It's yours," I said. "And so is everything I own. One day." Her eyes widened. "You're serious?" "I'm serious about you. About this. About making up for the time I lost." Grace blinked fast, her throat tightening. "I don't need your money." "I know," I said. "That's what makes you worthy of all of it." For the first time since we met, she hugged me, and I held on like I'd never let go again. I never thought I'd stand on a stage like this again. Not for business, not for charity, but for something deeply personal. Grace stood beside me, her hand trembling slightly in mine. The press had already arrived, dozens of flashing cameras, microphones shoved forward, questions flying like arrows. "Mr. Whitmore, is it true you found your daughter begging on the streets? Why hide it all these years? Is this a publicity stunt?" Grace flinched. I stepped forward. "No, this is not a stunt. This is my biggest failure and my greatest second chance." The crowd quieted. I met Grace a few weeks ago. At first, she was just a stranger with eyes that haunted me. But then I learned the truth. She's my daughter, and I failed her before I even knew she existed. I took a breath. Her mother, Emily, was the love of my life. We were separated by pride, misunderstanding, and years of silence. She never told me she had a child, and I never searched deep enough to find the truth. The reporters were stunned. Some lowered their cameras. Others watched with wide eyes. I looked at Grace. Her lips trembled. She grew up without me, struggled without me. She begged, she starved, she survived. While I was living in penthouses and signing million-dollar deals, she was just trying to stay warm. I turned back to the crowd. Money means nothing if the people you love are suffering. If I could trade all my wealth for the years I missed, I would, in a heartbeat. A tear slipped down Grace's cheek. I squeezed her hand. This isn't about image. It's about redemption. And from today, Grace is no longer alone. She's my family. She will have every right, every support, every piece of my heart. The room was silent. Then someone clapped. Then another. Then the whole hall erupted in applause. Grace leaned into me, whispering, "I didn't think anyone would care." "They don't have to," I whispered back. "I do." After the press conference, we stepped outside into the cool air. The sky was overcast, but it felt lighter than before. Grace looked at me. "You didn't have to do that." "I did," I said. "The world needed to know who you are, and I needed them to hear it from me." She nodded slowly. "I still don't trust all of this. It's a lot." "I know," I said. "Take your time. I'll be here when you're ready." She stared into the distance. "I used to dream about a dad. I thought he'd be a hero. Turns out he was just a broken man with too many regrets." I smiled sadly. That's probably the most accurate description of me anyone's ever said. She chuckled, just a little. And for that moment, it was enough. The past had been painful. The truth had been buried. But now the world knew. Grace knew. And most importantly, she wasn't invisible anymore. She was mine. Sometimes, life surprises us in the most unexpected ways. A chance encounter, a moment of kindness, a secret buried deep beneath years of silence. Richard's story reminds us that even when the past feels impossible to fix, healing can begin. It's never too late to forgive. It's never too late to seek the truth. And it's never too late to open your heart to love again. Through pain, regret, and broken dreams, Richard found redemption. Not through wealth or success, but through connection. Through the daughter he never knew he had. Through the family he thought he lost. We all carry wounds and secrets. But sometimes, when we least expect it, life gives us a second chance. A chance to rebuild, to forgive, to heal, to grow. If you're holding on to grief, anger, or regret today, remember Richard's journey. It's okay to feel broken. It's okay to feel lost. But don't give up on the possibility of healing. Reach out, open your heart, take that first step. Because sometimes the people we've been searching for have been waiting for us all along. Thank you for listening to Richard's story. If it moved you, please like, share, and subscribe so more people can hear stories of hope, healing, and second chances. And remember, your story is not over. The next chapter is waiting for you. Will you write it?